and welcome back. Thanks for joining me, John Glenn Hughes, in this, the latest in my short video series that I'm posting on YouTube in support of my latest book, which is my first novel entitled Sailing Towards the End of the World. If you want to tap into the content of this and the other videos that I've put up, just hit the subscribe button. If you like what you see, give it a thumbs up. If you've got any queries, observations or comments, pop them in the comments section below. Today I'm going to talk about post-traumatic stress, and it's a bit of a lead on from the last video when I talked about self-harming and suicide. Post-traumatic stress features throughout the book with a couple of characters, and it does feature Jonathan the Tiger Palmer. What is post-traumatic stress? Post-traumatic stress is a complex psychological impact system which affects an individual on the deepest levels of their consciousness. This obviously occurs after a significant emotional event which has left a sizable imprint upon the person's psyche. The trauma could be something they have witnessed happen to others, it could be something that has happened to them, and it could be something they have inflicted upon others, which is often not discussed. Post-traumatic stress can also relate to perhaps things that are considered less direct, as in it could be the byproduct of an abusive upbringing. This does not have to be a physically abusive upbringing, as per Jonathan Palmer in the book. This could be psychological. This could be a child growing up in a domestic environment where there is a lack of stability. One of the things that children need and crave more than anything is a loving environment and a structured environment where they are given sufficient support to prepare them for the slings and arrows of life. What occurs with post-traumatic stress within a person? Situations of extreme trauma will spark a neurochemical reaction in a person's body, and that is, to put it in the simplest possible terms. In the brain, we have the pituitary gland and hypothalamus region of the brain, often coined as the reptilian complex. This is the deepest part of our unconscious, the seat of our unconscious, which formed during our evolution hundreds of thousands of years ago. It is hardwired to induce us to survive. It is the survival seat of the fight, flight and freeze response, which we are all capable of invoking as and when we need to. Obviously, the way that we think will impact upon the way that we feel. When the reptilian complex is sparked into life in a situation of danger, of potential danger, it creates a flood of the stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline through a person's central nervous system. We are literally prepared to fight, flight, or if we're overwhelmed, we will freeze. Okay, so what is created is a chain reaction throughout the person's psyche and the physiology. As I said, we are now going to be in a situation where our blood flow is actually sent directly to a main muscle group, which will actually enable us to overcome the situation that we're facing. We have all of these stress hormones pumping through our body. This will obviously create an emotional reaction as well. As I've discussed, the reptilian complex, that limbic system of our brain, not only is it hardwired to protect us in the here and now in situations of potential danger, it is also hardwired, if we survive such situations, to survive future situations of a similar type. This becomes a protective loop. It is a physiological, psychological loop of protection, which will rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat and rinse and repeat ad infinitum when challenged with the potential for situations which mirror significant emotional events, major trauma that has happened in the past. Now, what I would say is the imagination is an immensely powerful function of the self. Imagination can spark neurochemical responses in the same way as tangible, real-life situations. Therefore, if we imagine ourselves in a situation of untold potential trauma, we will spark the same reaction throughout our central nervous system, throughout our neurology, throughout our emotions, as a real situation of danger. This is far-reaching and touches upon many aspects of people's lives, but in the context of post-traumatic stress, it is a loop, a preventative loop which will play out time and time again. This causes flashbacks. It can cause all manner of symptoms. It's very, very visceral. Byproducts are that you can end up shaking like a leaf, even when there was, as it happens, no real danger. A person could end up shaking like a leaf if they've perceived the potential for danger. The neurological loop has kicked in. The reptilian complex decides we must survive at all costs. Cortisol, adrenaline floods the central nervous system. Afterwards, as happens to Jonathan Palmer in the book a couple of times, he cannot control himself. He physically shakes like a leaf. This can happen to people after such events as car crashes that they've survived, conflict, even arguments with other people. Afterwards, in a privation, people can shake like a leaf. This is the body actually physically trying to disperse the survival response. This is mirrored by animals in the animal kingdom. Such animals as deer, when they run across the road, they're almost hit by a car. They can actually lie in a lay-by for an hour afterwards, shaking like a leaf. And this is actually a healthy thing because it helps the body disperse the stress response. We do share this with a lot of animals in the animal kingdom. Jonathan De Palma has flashbacks. He revivifies the smell of bodies burning. He revivifies gunpowder smoke overlaying the battlefields, seeing broken bodies lying about, and bodies that are twisted into impossible shapes and contortions. He has flashbacks and he shakes like a leaf. I'm going to talk about Jonathan Palmer briefly, in so much as he has, if you've read the book, you will have identified he has a tremendous capacity for inflicting violence. I think it's worth pointing out, he never strikes the first blow, ever. Jonathan the Tiger Palmer has an immense capacity for meting out violence, but never strikes the first blow. Therefore, in real terms, he can be coined as meek. And there's an old biblical saying, the meek shall inherit the earth. This is commonly misinterpreted, whereas people consider the coinage meek to equate to weakness or weak. This is actually completely wrong. The true meaning of the word meek, and let me tell you, language is incredibly powerful in a way that is mostly overlooked in today's society. As a neurolinguist, I can tell you categorically, language is incredibly important. The true definition of meek is a person who bears a sharp sword but does not wield it unless they have to. So when the Bible talks about the meek inheriting the earth, it's talking about those with the capacity for utilising to good effect violence, but who stymie it, but still have teeth. Because in a cruel world, good people have to do sometimes bad things. It's just the way it is. So Jonathan Palmer is meek. He has teeth. He bears weapons, even barehanded. The man has a tremendous capacity for meting out violence, and he uses it to good effect in the book. But when you read it, or if you've read it, you will have noticed, or you will notice, he never strikes the first blow. So, going back to post-traumatic stress, it cripples him at times, and this becomes evident in the latter stages of the book. I'm not going to go into psychotherapeutics in this series of videos. What I would say to anyone who's watching this and is experiencing post-traumatic stress, because another common misconception is it's soldiers who've survived combat are the only ones that really suffer post-traumatic stress. That is another fallacy. Post-traumatic stress can affect any member of society. What I will say is, from experience, it is absolutely treatable. Post-traumatic stress can be dealt with, and I would say, from experience, it can be dealt with effectively and it can be dealt with quickly. The last thing you want to do if you're suffering from a post-traumatic stress is bury it, although it's the first thing most people who encounter it do. They try and distance themselves from the traumatic experience and push it to the back of the storeroom of their mind. And I can tell you, in most cases, suffice to say, if you bury these things which are alive, they will commonly, frequently, or even infrequently, at a time where you least expect it, crawl back out. Anyway, that's it for this video. I hope you found it interesting and perhaps useful. Again, if this has affected you in any way, you can always give me a shout out on that email address. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about the religious aspects of the book and the connected factors. So, until then, stay safe, be kind to yourself, and cheers.